and welcome to this live class. Today we are going to be talking about casual phrases for conversation. I got the question for discourse markers, agreeing and disagreeing, and just maybe some casual phrases or slang that you might need if you are interacting with native speakers. I will also say that because I am from the United States, my English is United States English or American English, so I'll give more tips related to that dialect. And hello, good morning. How are you guys doing today? This is a good question to practice responding to. I find a lot of people don't know how to respond when someone says, "Hi, how are you doing today?" And we always just say good. So we'll practice that as well. But yeah, let me know, how are you guys doing? I know that it is the weekend now, so probably some people feel more relaxed today, unless you have to work on the weekend, in which case maybe you're less relaxed today. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I had a good week, and it's a little bit cold where I live because I live next to the ocean, and it's been getting really foggy in the mornings here. But yeah, I've been pretty good. It's going well for me. Nice. I'm great. Awesome. Yeah, today I need to take a trip to Santiago after the class, so I'll go to a different city, which is like an hour and a half away, which isn't that far, but I don't drive, like I take the bus, so that makes it more of a trip. Let me see. Hi, good morning. Hello. You're from India. Okay, in your case, good evening. I said this before, and of course I'm going to also post the live class, but I got the request for a class related to casual phrases that we can use in a conversation. So that's going to be our topic today, as well as discourse markers. So if you were here last time, you know that I'm not able to use my whiteboard because I can't flip my screen. So instead of that, I'm going to use photos today in the class. I'll start with the first topic just while everyone's getting situated and connecting to the class. Oh, you're from Mexico, but living in Vancouver. Nice. I like Vancouver. It's a nice part of Canada. I've been there a couple times, and it's similar to the south of Chile. If any of you guys are from Chile, it's very green, humid, but also cold is how I would describe it. You're in the desert in Morocco. Okay, nice. Hello, welcome to the class. Yeah, I've never been to Morocco before, but I would love to go to Morocco. From Turkey. Awesome. Okay, so to start, I can move my little face around here. Yeah, so one person asked me when I reached out and said, "What do you guys want to do the live class about?" And they said discourse markers would be an interesting topic. And I agree. These are basically phrases that you can use to start a sentence in casual conversation. So discourse markers are like connecting phrases. We have very simple discourse markers, for example, the word like or you know. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with using words like this, but I also think that you sound more articulate and eloquent when you're able to use a variety. So for me personally, this is my point of view. If I hear someone use the word like, I myself use the word like quite a bit. You probably notice, especially when I'm giving examples. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, if you hear someone and every second or third word that they say is like, this can be a distraction, right? So it can be a distraction if someone repeats the same word all the time. Not only just the word like, But I remember there was a guy in my class when I was in high school, and he used to always say some word like inconceivably. And he said this like every other word. And I also found that to be distracting. Also, hello, welcome. This is our first slide, so all I was doing so far is explaining discourse markers. Yeah, I kind of jumped in right away today, so sorry for not giving you guys a couple minutes to join, but I got for the live class requests about casual phrases, including discourse markers, agreeing and disagreeing, and so on. So welcome if this is your first class. We're going to have the class for about an hour. You can give me examples and write them in the chat, comment, respond to each other. So feel free to, participate as much as you want without bullying or spamming people, of course. But as long as we're focused on the class a little bit. Yes, exactly. So a very common muletilla in English, we say a crutch, like a word that you depend on a lot. And it's the same as in Spanish, a muletilla that you use if you break your foot and you need to use some sticks to walk. We call those in English crutches. Crutches. Let me write that here. So a very common crutch word that we use, or phrase I would say, in English is, you know what I mean, exactly. If you are from Chile, a lot of people at the end of their sentence say cachai. In the United States, one common phrase that we use is, you know what I mean? Again, I think if you use this every sentence, that sounds a bit excessive. But sometimes it's very helpful to say something and you know what I mean if you want to connect with the other person. So for me, I don't find any problem with any phrase. It's just when it's in a lot of excess, it might be distracting for some people. You feel me? Exactly. So here are some examples. And if you can think of a sentence that you could combine with one of these, definitely write it in the chat and I'm happy to read it out. I'll give my own examples as I read through them. So the first one. So basically, this is a phrase that I would often use when starting a story or explanation. So if I messaged my sister and told her I have so much to tell you about what happened to me yesterday, she might then call me and ask me, what happened that you wanted to tell me. And I could tell her, so basically, and then go into a long explanation. And that is also interesting thing because maybe I explain something for a very long time and it's not basic at all. So the same thing with long story short. This is a really good one if you have a lot of information. Like, for example, if you ask me, Maggie, why did you get fired? This is a made-up example. Why did you get fired from your last job? I could say, long story short, they hired someone new and didn't need me anymore. Obviously, there are more details I can add to the situation, but I can just say, long story short, and then say what happened in few words. So this is a very useful expression if you don't want to explain something too much or reduce what you're saying. Also, I'm catching up with the comments a little bit here. Thank you, Professor Daniel Xavier. Daniel Xavier. I appreciate your comment. And though is also a common one. Yeah, exactly. Though. So I didn't see him though. That's the thing too, is it can be a connector of contrast as well. So it has its own meaning, but when you see someone using it every single sentence, it loses the meaning a little bit. In summary, yeah, you could also say that. I would say in a casual conversation, long story short is going to be a lot more common to hear. In summary, sounds a little bit more formal, like in an email or something like that, maybe when you're writing. Let me see what you're saying. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Long story short is like en pocas palabras. So that's long story short. Then we have at the end of the day. And this phrase is hilarious to me because I was watching a British reality series, and we use this phrase in the United States a lot as well, but in this British series, they use this all the time. They use this all the time at the end of the day. They would say a lot, at the end of the day, it is what it is. For example, someone might use this phrase at the end of the day if, imagine we're at work and we're complaining about our boss and we're saying, like all of this terrible stuff is happening at the company. I could say, at the end of the day, I think at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason, and maybe our boss is trying to make us more productive. Or it's kind of like to summarize my opinion about something at the end of the day. It's like, even with all of the things that we're complaining about aside, this is maybe my opinion at the core of everything. So you could say, maybe I'm explaining to you a grammar issue in English and the past tense. And then I could say, at the end of the day, with all of this aside, practice is the most important thing. So it doesn't really matter all of what I've said to you in a sense, because the most important thing that you can do to improve is going to be practice. So at the end of the day, practicing is going to be the most important thing. Yeah, so it's kind of like a way to, even after using all of what I've said, this is the most important thing or thesis that I think. Yeah, it's kind of like concluding, like what is your final resolution or point that you want to make. Yes, and also Sylvia, in a nutshell, is similar to long story short. Exactly. Also, welcome everyone who's joining. Today we're practicing different phrases that you can use in a casual conversation in English. And maybe you've heard of some of them before, but if you speak with a native speaker especially, you might hear them using these phrases. So another one, and I like this one because it has a few different uses. We have this phrase, I mean. And I mean, one of the uses that I think is very helpful is if you want to not agree with someone, but you're kind of an indirect person. So if I told you something like, hey, don't you think that English is the easiest language to learn? You might say something like, I mean, so especially if you use this tone like, I'm kind of thinking about it, we could use I mean when you don't really want to readily agree with someone. I mean, yeah, and I don't know if anyone here has an example of a situation where you've seen any of these. Don't hesitate to add it to the chat as well. I think it's good to have, at the end of the day, I think it's good to have a lot of examples. Another situation when you could use I mean is, in general, we kind of use this as a filler word or a crutch, like as a connector. So you might hear someone say something and like they're starting to explain themselves and they kind of lose track of what they're saying. And yeah, at the end of the day, just like that. So if someone's kind of explaining themselves and then they trail off or kind of want to stop because they're not really making sense, you also might hear someone use this phrase, I mean, in that sense as well. So those are a couple of different situations. Exactly. And also, es como para suavizar una opinión contraria. Exactly. So if someone's like, isn't this the best restaurant ever? You could say, it's okay. Yeah, for me, it's better to work out in the morning. Yes, exactly. I would say instead of is better, it's better. So it is better. But that's a really good example. So for instance, if someone's telling you, it's best to work out at night, you could say, I mean, for me, it's better to work out in the morning. And then you say, I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, I didn't mean it that way is another good phrase. Like if you say something and someone takes offense, you could say, oh, I didn't mean it that way, which happens a lot. If you're speaking in your second language, it's common to be like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. It wasn't my intention. I didn't mean it like that. And also, yes, I speak Spanish because, well, I've been living in Chile for 4 years. Long story short, I've been living in Chile for 4 years. Is there a difference between I would and I mean regarding disagreement? Yeah, like if you're gonna disagree with someone, you would use these in a different way. So if someone, for example, is like, I don't know, let me think. If someone tells you, I stay up until 4 in the morning, you could say, I wouldn't do that if I were you, or I would try to go to bed earlier. I mean is more like discourse marker, so it's kind of an additional phrase, not the main verb of the sentence. You could say, I mean, I would go to bed earlier. So instead of being the main verb that you're using to show disagreement, it's kind of more like an additional phrase that you could use to soften what you're saying, if that makes sense. Also, hello, hi from Italy, welcome. I mean, better days are coming. I didn't mean to say that exactly. Okay, so this one is also good. I think that it's kind of young as well, but I don't know. I could maybe think of someone. It wouldn't be completely out of the question to hear someone like of my parents' generation using it. That's the important thing, that some casual speech or slang is for just one generation and it doesn't transcend. But some casual speech, it's casual and informal, but you can hear people of different generations using it. So for the most part, I'm trying to use ones a little bit more in that way rather than trying to only teach you guys things that Gen Z or Gen Alpha would say. I spent my time visiting the historical places in Venice. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah. Is, if that makes sense, also a discourse marker? I would say so, yes, because it's kind of, I mean, there are discourse markers that have a specific function in terms of like functional use and other ones that have a function in terms of tone. If that makes sense, I use this discourse marker a lot and it's a little bit like a comprehension check, similar to, but that's the thing is sometimes people use a discourse marker without using the intended meaning. So you can explain something and then say, really wanting to comprehension check and see if they understand you. Or you can just say, yeah, I went over here, and then I did this, So that's the thing with discourse markers. Sometimes they have a meaning and sometimes they don't. Same thing with the word like. So whenever people act like, oh, we should eliminate the word like from our vocabulary. Well, in my opinion, no, because it actually does have a real meaning, but sometimes people use it without the meaning. So I would say that it is a discourse marker, if that makes sense. Not gonna lie is another one. So this is kind of like another more casual way to say honestly. So not gonna lie, that was a really difficult test. And another thing to keep in mind in formal speech in English, it's not correct to remove the person. So I can't say I need to say I am not going to lie if this is correct formal speech. It's not possible to remove the person. But you'll see that native speakers, and a lot of the times in movies, this happens as well, sometimes we remove the subject when we're speaking very casually. So instead of, I just got here, you might hear someone say, whew, just got here 5 minutes ago. And this is only going to be used in a casual conversation. Again, it's not correct if you are taking a test or doing formal writing to not include the subject, you, he, she. But if you're going to talk in a casual way, you might hear some people say something only like, not gonna lie, instead of, I am not gonna lie. Let me see what you guys were saying. Why does someone that knows you start the conversation all the time with hey? I think because with the time, hello and hi feel a bit formal and distant. Like personally, when I say hi to someone, if I'm texting a friend, maybe it feels a little bit more formal, or it doesn't feel formal, but it doesn't feel as friendly and close as saying hey. So there's not a specific reason, like everyone one day on the earth decided, let's all say hey instead of saying hi. But I think that over time language develops in this way where it starts to feel a little bit maybe too common we use hi for everyone, including your teachers, including the other people in your classes, and then it's like, okay, we need a more casual way to say this. So I personally use the word hey a lot when starting conversations with people. With students, I often use hi because I feel that it's that mix of being friendly and maybe a little less like sliding into the DMs. But yeah, not at all. Yeah. No, so, okay, here I'm going to explain this question, which is in Spanish. Not at all, eso significa para nada. No significa, si quieres decir no del todo o parcialmente, yo diría not everything or not all. Pero not at all, eso siempre sería para nada. So you could say not all, but not at all. Esas tres palabras sería para nada. But it's very similar. Yeah. Yeah. Es que si me preguntas en español voy a responder. No sé. I always respond in the language that people ask me in. Okay, so can you basically give... Oh, wait. Yeah, another example with so basically. I would say for me personally, there are two situations where I would use so basically. If you're about to tell a story, or if you're about to give an explanation. So I could use this if I'm about to explain to you some phrasal verbs. I could say, so basically, when you have a phrasal verb, you need 2 parts, right? Or 3 parts. Or also if you're explaining to me something that happened, like, oh, I just had a job interview and I said, oh, what happened? You could say, so basically the person in charge asked me if I could come in and respond to a few questions. So I would use so basically in these cases where you're about to give an explanation or summary of an experience. I would use it in that way. And discourse markers are helpful because they kind of show the other person where you're going with what you're about to say. So if you say, so basically, my ears perk up. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the explanation. So the next one we have, you've never heard for what it's worth. Okay, I can skip maybe to that one. For what it's worth. This is useful when you're going to give someone some advice or words. For example, if someone tells you, if I'm like, oh, I was cyberbullied. Everyone said that they hate my shirt and that people were so mean to me. You could tell me, for what it's worth, I love your shirt. So, in a sense, it's like used to comfort someone if they're in a bad place and you want to say something like, maybe it's not so important what I think, but I'm going to tell it to you like words of comfort. So, it's a way to be kind of modest when you're giving someone comfort or positive advice. For what it's worth, like if your coworker gets really negative feedback at work. Oh, the boss said I'm not productive enough. You could say something like, for what it's worth, I think that you're a really good coworker and you are productive, in my opinion. So for what it's worth is like, maybe my feedback or my positive words are not the most important thing in this situation, but if they're valuable to you, here they are. So I would say that's the situation where I would use for what it's worth. Again, we have to be fair. To be fair is used kind of like, I would say also similar to, if you don't really agree with someone and you want to qualify what they're saying. So if someone says something like, oh, I don't know, our coworker is not productive. I'll use this example again. You could say something like, to be fair, he has a really difficult job. So it's kind of like to be nice to him or to add extra information so that it's fair. So it's a little bit literal, this one. To be fair, he has a difficult job. So I'm going to kind of push back a little bit on what you're saying and not fully agree with you. I think we need to add this extra point to be fair to our coworker. To be fair, but you could also use it not only talking about other people. You could use this phrase to be fair when you're, for example, if someone says, oh, I think that this movie should have won the Oscars. You could say, to be fair, that movie was, to be fair, this other movie was also really good. Or, to be fair, that movie was good, but it was a little bit boring at parts. So I would say using it to kind of add a point. You're not fully disagreeing, but you're adding more context to what's happening. It's a little bit like, honestly, I would say not gonna lie is more like you're being honest with someone. To be fair is more like you are, yes, you're being honest, but it's a little bit more specific than just being honest. You're like, I'm gonna honestly add another point that I feel like you're ignoring. Like, okay, maybe what you're saying is fine, but I think you're missing this key part. I would use to be fair in that sort of context. And we also have, that being said, I did a video about this. It's very similar to just saying the word but. So English is hard. That being said, it's fun to learn. Similar to but, it's fun to learn. So that's another really good one that I would add to your vocabulary if you haven't used it much before. And then we have just putting it out there. This is more similar to honestly. So in this case, it's like maybe other people won't really like your idea. But for example, you could say something like, if you and your friends don't know what to do this weekend, you could say, well, I rented a cabin in the forest. Just putting it out there, we can go this weekend if you want to. It's like if you're offering an idea, but you're not saying that you need to do it. It's not like, oh, we have to do my idea. I'm just putting it on the table. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just offering this idea. I would use it in that sort of situation. And yeah, also, if you guys have any questions or examples, feel free to add them as well while we're going through this. We just have one more and then I'll show you another topic here. Also, yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to post the class afterwards, so you'll also be able to see it there as well. To be fair, prices are expensive. Yeah, exactly. So you can add like a complete phrase or a complete clause after this discourse marker. Actually, that's the case with all of these. You can add a complete sentence after. So none of these are something where you need to only add the verb or like change to fit into a sentence. They're all different. The beauty of discourse markers is you can kind of add them to the beginning of what you're saying to give you time to think. The last one, this I will say is the youngest one, Lowkey or Highkey. So this one is a lot more like slang, but you will probably see influencers and videos of people using it. I would say it's kind of like millennial to younger, Lowkey and Highkey, but because I'll see millennials using it as well. Lowkey, let me think of how to explain this. It's like if you think something in a subtle way, and Highkey is if you think something in a very strong way. So like, low-key, I'm really enjoying this class, but it's not something that maybe I feel like I want to say in a very strong way. So I can say low-key. It's kind of like if you have an uncommon or controversial opinion, you could say low-key. Low-key, pineapple on pizza is actually pretty good. So yeah, if any of you guys have an example of a controversial opinion that you have, maybe like two foods that shouldn't really go together, that you think are good. Yeah, kind of discreet. You can use low-key. So low-key, peanut butter and jelly is a really good meal. High-key is the opposite. So it's something that you feel really strongly about saying. You can say, high-key, this was the best movie of the Oscars and it should have won. So yeah, I would say low-key and high-key can be used in that way. We are talking about discourse markers. So here I have casual phrases that you can use in a casual conversation in English to indicate a lot of these, it's not really about the content as much as about the tone. So that's a really important distinction to make. I'll just put this out there. Maybe we should try a new strategy. Yeah, this is a really good example. I would also say, for instance, if you're working in an English-speaking environment, it's really good to have these in your back pocket because it helps you to not sound too direct, right? Sometimes when we only speak in a very direct way, it sounds like you're really disagreeing strongly with someone. But if you want to add a little bit of a softer tone, or you maybe don't feel so strongly about it, like, well, we can go to my cabin for a vacation, but I don't feel so strongly about it. So I'm going to say, just to put it out there, for example. So I would say when you're learning how to talk in another language, not only the vocabulary to literally be able to express your ideas is important, but also being able to use tone and identify tone. So it will also be interesting if any of you see these discourse markers in TV shows or other places. So I'm going to actually go to, I have a different set of words that we're going to do related to agreeing and disagreeing, because that was another topic that someone asked me about. So related to agreeing and disagreeing. Yeah. To make a long story short. Yeah, exactly. I would say to make a long story short is the longer way to say long story short. Low key, that pizza was the best part of my day. Exactly. If you guys say this to a native speaker, they're going to be like, where did you learn that word? You've been on TikTok too much. I was thinking of ways for agreeing because, of course, a lot of people already know some of the more common ones, like, yes, I agree. But if you're listening to someone talk and you're kind of like agreeing with them, you want to use a variety of phrases, right? So there are a few different phrases here that you can use. So let me share here. So for example, when you're agreeing with someone, you could say, okay, when you're agreeing with someone, you could say, oh, for sure, for sure. And also notice that I don't say for sure. In English, it's common, especially when you have a word with the R in it, that you reduce the vowel sound. So for sure, for sure, for sure. There was a girl that I knew in college that was always like, oh, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. This is also good pronunciation practice if any of you guys are working on your pronunciation to try to say these in a faster way. It can help you with your American R pronunciation. For sure, for sure. Also, if someone's talking and you want to show that you agree with them, you could say, definitely. Yeah, definitely. For sure. Sometimes I combine them as well. You could also say, yeah, no doubt. There are also longer words you can say. For example, undoubtedly would be like the more formal. Undoubtedly would be like the more formal word if you're using it in an essay. But if you're in a casual conversation, you could say, yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that is also used. No doubt about that. Certainly as well. Certainly. And notice that I don't say certainly, 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 certainly. Instead of, I kind of skip the middle syllable with the T and just elongate the N. Certainly, certainly, 100%. Yeah, 100%. 100%. 100%. If someone's like, I keep going back to this because my brain is starved for examples today, but if someone said, oh, that movie should have won the Oscar, you could say, yeah, 100%, or I'm with you. I'm with you. Of course, totally, absolutely, for sure. I'm with you. That's a good one as well. That's fair. These next ones, so the first 5 that I have are strong agreement, I would say. The next 2, that's fair or that's valid. These are both not as strong agreement. So you're trying to give someone an affirmation, but you don't fully feel so strongly in agreement. You could say, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, that's valid. So we have, yeah, for sure. Definitely. No doubt. 100%. I'm with you. That's fair. That's valid. And my voice kind of goes up because I don't feel so strongly about it. It's almost like a question voice. Yeah, that's fair. That's valid. And it's really useful to have these as well because you're not always in a conversation where you agree with someone. But for example, I would use it like sometimes you don't really agree with someone, but you want to show that you agree enough to not go into that conversation with them. So like if someone tells me something, I would use this especially in like a political context. If someone tells me something like a strong political ideology, and let's imagine I'm in an English class. So like, because I'm working as a teacher, I'm not here to debate my students. Like, I don't really feel like talking about someone's political ideology in that much detail. I mean, like, maybe for them to practice their English, but if someone's telling me, like, yeah, I, like, love Donald Trump or something, and I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. You know, it's like, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to show you that, like, that's fine so we can continue and, like, not talk about your opinion, I would say, is, like, one situation when you might use something like that. Yeah, you can say when pigs fly, we'll all be on the same page. Exactly. Again, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't use it if I strongly disagreed with someone. That could just be like, that would be better if you just said, and you kind of just continued with what you're doing. Maybe I would use it more to if someone told me, I really think that this movie should have won the Oscars and I didn't really feel strongly about that movie. Maybe it's better in that case. I could say, that's fair. Yeah, that's valid. So yeah, I would say if you strongly disagree and you just don't want to talk about it, it's probably better to use I mean. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you could also say I couldn't agree more. The last ones, yeah, but I would say I couldn't agree more instead of I couldn't agree anymore would be the more common phrase. Absolutely. Yeah. And the last ones, someone also asked about this specifically. Me too. I think so too. Me neither. I don't either. So all of these are used to agree with someone. But when you say me neither or I don't either, you're agreeing to something that's negative, if that makes sense. I don't like this movie. Me neither. I don't like this movie. I don't either. You're agreeing with something that's negative. These words either and neither are used for combining two things. So we can use either or neither to combine two things like I don't like this movie. I don't either. I don't like this movie. Me neither. It's always used to combine two things. You could also say neither of the students liked the movie. So whenever you're talking about two things, we use either or neither. Let me see. Or neither do I. Or nor do I. I would say personally, coming from the United States, nor do I sounds very formal. Neither do I would be a more common, casual, everyday way to say that. But both of those are grammatically correct. Normally you pronounce either and neither different. How do I pronounce it? Me neither. Me neither? Me. Yeah, me either. How do I pronounce it? Because there are people that say either one. Both of those are correct. I think I don't know if this is, I've looked it up before because people have asked me what is the pronunciation, either or either, and both of them are correct in American English. You can use both. This happens with a few words like aunt and aunt, data and data, where there are two correct pronunciations. So maybe I say either. Yeah, I think personally when I'm choosing between things, I'm like, oh, either one. But then when I'm disagreeing, I say me neither instead of me neither. So yeah, that's a good point. Potato, potato. Exactly. Yeah, I think when I'm giving an option, I use more the other pronunciation. Also, someone asked, and maybe if someone else has a response to this because I'm not sure, entre gustos para disgusto. Would that be like to agree to disagree or entre gustos para disgusto? Does anyone have an idea for how we would say that in English? I'm going to pin this comment in case anyone has an idea because I'm not sure how that would be. When can we use yet? Well, yet has different uses. The word yet, one of the uses is similar to but. So for example, I helped him all day, yet he did not help me. So you could use it in a very similar way to but, especially in writing. This is used a lot. Yet he never told me. But I would say in conversation, it's way more common to hear the word but versus yet. You will probably hear yet used more frequently in the context of time. And in that case, it's always at the end of a phrase talking about something that you still haven't done or that you still need to do. And it's used in questions or negative sentences. Like, have you done it yet? Or I haven't done it yet. Or he didn't do it yet. So it's very frequently used with the present perfect tense, and it's used with questions and negative sentences. Hi, one. Yeah, sorry, I get a lot of messages, so I saw that you DM'd me and I forgot to respond. But I'm glad that you're in our class. I was mean to him, yet he didn't say anything. Yeah, exactly. So you could use it in that case as well. I was mean to him, yet he didn't say anything. So, for example, I could say something like, I want you all to agree with me. So imagine that I tell you, like, oh, that movie was the best movie that I've ever seen. And you agree with me. Choose one of these phrases. Oh, okay, I understand now. Yeah, different strokes for different folks. You could also say to each his own. To each his own. Like if everyone has a different taste, you could say different strokes for different folks, or to each his own. Yeah, thank you, Vivian. So for example, if I tell you, I loved that movie, like it was the best movie ever, how would you respond to me if you wanted to agree with me? And I said, oh, I loved that movie. What's a phrase that you could use to respond to me? I loved that movie. I loved the movie. I didn't want to give an example because I was like, maybe some of you guys have a different taste. So I would say a movie and you'd be like, no doubt, I'm with you. Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely. Exactly. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Especially that one would be good if I said, this was the best movie ever. You could say 100%. Or this is another really common phrase, same. So did I. Me too. I like this one a lot as well. Same. Or same here, you could say. Definitely me too. Me neither is better if I say I didn't like that movie. So either and neither are used when we are responding to something negative. So I could say I didn't like that movie. You could say me neither. I loved it as well. Nice. Okay. And same, or like I said, same here. I think we have time to do one more, which is this one. Phrases for disagreeing. Okay, we kind of talked about I mean already, so we're going to go past that one. If you want to validate someone, but also disagree, this is a very useful thing to do. I like this sentence. I didn't enjoy that movie as much as you did. Yeah, or like, that's valid, but I didn't like it as much as you did. If you want to disagree with someone, one useful strategy is to validate them, but then disagree. So, I feel you, but I hear you, but you could also, this is a lot more direct, say, that's where I disagree. Like, okay, maybe for part of what you said, but what you just said, that's where I disagree. You could also say, this is more casual, I gotta disagree with you there. I gotta is fast, short way to say, I have got to. I have got to is the complete phrase. But I gotta we use when you have a specific need. Like if you need to go to the bathroom. Ooh, I gotta go to the bathroom real bad. So that's how to use this. I gotta is I have got to. We also have I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, which is similar. And the last one, that doesn't add up for me. So this is an interesting one, like you don't really agree with all the details about what someone said. Like if there's a decision that was made, your boss fired your coworker, and then you're given a specific reason. Usually it's to respond that you don't agree with the reason that something happened. Like, oh, they were fired because of budget cuts. I could say, you see, that doesn't add up to me. I don't get why they did that. Also, hello, welcome to the class. That doesn't count for me. If something doesn't count, it means that it has a different meaning. For example, if we are playing basketball and I throw the ball into the hoop, but I'm outside of the court, you can say, no, that's not a point. That doesn't count. So it's like if you are playing a game and your point is not valid, you could say, no, that doesn't count. But I wouldn't use it in disagreeing with someone. I would use it in other contexts, that phrase. So imagine that I tell you, like, the best album that I've ever listened to was, and it's like a really bad music album. You could think, how could you disagree with someone if they tell you something like they loved this music album and they think it's the best thing ever? What could you say to disagree with someone that their taste in music? I know that to each his own, or different strokes for different folks. You could say something like this one here, I beg to differ. That's another kind of like stronger phrase that you could use as well. So I'll write the question here. What could you say if someone disagrees, or wait, no, sorry, my brain. If someone tells you they love an album, but you disagree, that's sock. Okay, I would not say that's sock. I would say that album sucks, which is very strong and not a very polite thing to say, but that album sucks instead of sock. I strongly disagree with you. That's interesting, yet my taste is a bit different. I gotta disagree with you. That's a good example as well of something you could say. I think you need to take some music class. I hear you, but for me it's lovely. Ooh, yeah, you can also use it to defend if someone disagrees with you. That's a good example as well. I don't have good taste. Not in my book. That's another good example. I see where you're coming from, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. You don't have good taste. Instead of a good taste, we would just say you don't have good taste without the word. I feel you, however, there are better ones out there. That's a good phrase too. Yeah, and I like this phrase a lot. Not in my book. That's a good one. So yeah, that's valid, but I'm not a fan at all. So for the last one, that doesn't add up for me. I'm trying to think of more examples. That doesn't add up for me is more specific. It's like, if you think in the sense of math, like you add numbers together to get the total, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4. The idea when you say that doesn't add up for me, you're like, 2 plus 1 doesn't equal 4. There's something that I disagree with in the decision or the plan or like the reason behind something. So for example, if you see, like, I don't know, we had in Chile, the electricity went out in the entire country like 3 weeks ago. And then if you see the news and someone's like, this happened because of a natural disaster, you can say, that doesn't add up for me. Like, maybe it's to show more skepticism, like you're skeptical with the fact that it happened for that reason. Like, no, I don't think that those parts fit together for me. I'm skeptical about that. Also, like I said, if there's a decision, your boss decides to fire your coworker and says that it's because your coworker was not productive. If you disagree with that decision, you could say, that doesn't add up for me. Like, the reasons that you gave don't really make any sense. So I would use it more to maybe something that you're skeptical about. You're skeptical about the reasons and the why behind something. I would say that doesn't add up for me in that context. That's a good album, but I don't really like it though. Yeah, exactly. That's another good example with though as a discourse marker. Das passt nicht für mich. in German, if you guys want to know how to also say this in German. I guess someone must buy that. Here I would emphasize the word someone. I guess someone must buy it. I'll say I respect your feelings, but that music doesn't move me. Yeah. Or you could say I respect how you feel, but that music doesn't move me. It's not for me. It's not my thing. Yeah, but that's what I had in terms of phrases. I'm going to send you guys, I'm not going to send it. I'm going to post the video from today. And yeah, does anyone have any questions, maybe related to what we did today? I can be on for a couple more minutes before going to Santiago. I gotta disagree with you there. I didn't find the movie that interesting. I like this word also. It's good to use the word that. So if you said, I didn't find it interesting, it's like zero interest, but you could say, I didn't find it that interesting. So that's a really good word to use when maybe you don't want to be so extreme about what you're saying. I found it was okay, but I didn't find it that interesting. We can use this word that. Also, you're welcome, Jeanette. But yeah, so I would say with discourse markers, there's something that you're probably going to notice the most watching movies or listening to native speakers talking on social media or story times. So basically, I was with this guy the other day and he blah blah. So, you're going to hear them in those contexts. And yeah, I would say practice them. I recommend using discourse markers. It's how people communicate, not only the message, but also the tone of what you want to say. If you kind of agree with someone, if you want to show more feeling beneath the surface. I know that some languages are very literal in what they say. In English, we have more layers of meaning. I feel that our way of communicating in the United States, and I think even more in the UK, is not so direct all the time, especially in the corporate environment. Inglés casual. That's just the name of my live. My channel is not Inglés Casual. I do lives on Saturday at 11 a.m. Chile time. I will post this live right now. So if you missed part, it will be on my page. Do you talk about German? Yeah, that people are more literal. Exactly. I remember I forget what it was. I have to remember, but I asked my teacher about a word recently in German, and I said, is it actually positive or more neutral? And she was like, well, I think it's just very literal, the Krankenhaus. Exactly. She was like, I think it's actually very literal, the word that you said, but that people, if you give someone a gift and they like it, but not too much, in the United States, we have a tendency to be overly fake in those kind of situations. And I feel maybe in Germany or in some other places, you guys are more honest and more literal with what you're saying. You're watching me from the Philippines. Awesome. That's cool. I love that. Have a really great day, everyone. I hope that you all can get some rest and have a good restful weekend. I can say this word, imagine. Imagine all the people. Imagine. All right. So take care. I'll see you in the next one. If you guys join, it will be next Saturday at 11 a.m. Have a good one and nice job today practicing your English. Take care, everyone.